He moved forward in the queue, 6 feet behind the shopper in front of him. It was his turn. The shop assistant on duty pointed to her mask. He mouthed, "Sorry," reached into his top pocket and donned his mask. She gave a thumbs up, and he entered. Behind their masks, they smiled. Unlike some of the no-mask confrontations you may have seen on YouTube, that one was quickly and sensitively handled. A moment's forgetfulness. It happens to us all, but we don't always take kindly to being reminded of our duty, our obligations. Sometimes discipline is not a popular concept these days. We have a live and let live attitude. Uncomfortable with the idea that anyone has the right, much less the responsibility, to remind, to discipline anyone else. We resent encroachments on our freedom. We say, who are they? Who are we to judge? An occasional preacher like me, when asked to prepare a reflection, looks first at the lectionary readings for that Sunday. In this case, the Gospel reading is Matthew 18:15-20. I did a double take. On first glance, it seemed to be all about discipline, all about confronting the brother who'd sinned against you. First meeting privately, then with witnesses, then informing the church, and finally, if he won't listen, treating him, as the passage says, as though he were a pagan or a tax collector. Strong stuff. Did I relish holding forth for 10 minutes on that? Or would I just cut and run and dust off a sermon from my time as an elder at St. Mary's in Aberdeen? I decided to stick with the reading and was immediately reminded of the late Mike Crawford, minister at St. Mary's, my former church. He once told of a tutor at St. Andrew's when he was a student. "Preach, gentlemen," the tutor said, and more's the pity, it was all gentlemen in those days. "Preach with the Bible in one hand and the day's newspaper in the other." The Bible and the current news story side by side. Good advice. I'll take it. It's instructive to remember the situation when Matthew's Gospel was written in the 1st century. The church was suffering persecution from without and growing pains from within. The growing pains expressing themselves in various tensions and disputes. In this chapter, Matthew recalls the sayings of Jesus that emphasize the importance of Christians living together in harmony. While there's a concern for the individual, the welfare of the ecclesia, the church, the community of faith, is paramount. Individual reconciliation is the goal, but there's a clear emphasis on obligations to each other in the emerging church. The reflection has a title: Maintaining, Building, Welcoming. The early church had just such a need, passing on the teachings of Jesus, maintaining, first by word of mouth and personal witness, then in written form, building a community of believers and being prepared as time went by and understanding of Jesus' message became clear, welcoming all into such a community. The passage today records some of the inevitable struggles during that period of establishing a presence, a foothold towards the kingdom. Perhaps we share something very similar with the early church as we deliberate reopening the building as a place of worship and sanctuary, and as the community outreach that is Finn's place. There are difficulties, we know them only too well, not ones of conflict in the church between members, but ones of being the church in new ways during difficult times. They present challenges that require imaginative thinking, that don't just look towards more of the same when regulations ease and permitted numbers increase, but are willing to experiment with outdoor activities, socially distanced visiting, worship opportunities in the sanctuary out with the traditional Sunday slot, one-off events aimed at children and young people, and home groups. We have been blessed with the opportunity to maintain contact via Zoom during the past months, and privileged to hear increasing numbers of the congregation leading worship. We now can build on that experience as we develop church in different and exciting ways. We have had friends and worshippers join us from different parts of the country. Can we maintain that? Have young families been absent over the past months? How can we reconnect? Remember that not all our regular worshippers have been able or felt they wished to join in Zoom services. And we thank all those who've kept such folk in the worship loop during this time. How do we ensure that worship within the sanctuary is possible for them again? In what form? Will it be prioritized perhaps for them? But remember too, we are a parish church with an ongoing commitment to welcome anyone, ticketed or not, as it were. A point not lost on me in a very personal way. On Sunday, the 3rd of February 2019, I felt a sudden, overwhelming desire to go to church again. I'd been an elder at St Mary's, King Street, Aberdeen, for many years before we moved to Glasgow. But I'd found retirement difficult. 38 years of teaching, 33 of them running art departments as principal teacher, had taken their toll and left me exhausted. I didn't feel the desire to commit to another church, let alone feel the need to worship. 2 baptisms, 2 weddings, and 3 funerals over several years, my only church contact. And then, and I can't explain it other than to say, I felt compelled to worship again. I felt drawn to Langside Church. I felt at home again. There was an admission of new members the following Sunday. I joined. The rest you know. What if I had arrived on that Sunday and been told, sorry, we've reached our quota for today? Would I have come back? As we move forward, it's surely a combination of rediscovering something we have lost, along with being prepared to be surprised by some things new. We have to aim for that in the weeks and months ahead as a church, a community with Jesus at its centre. The passage we read earlier ends with the words, "Where 2 or 3 come together in my name, I am there with them." Small gatherings, alternative gatherings, doing church in different ways. We should be encouraged by these words. A reading that begins with uncomfortable times in the early church ends with a blessing. Jesus promises to be with every group that gathers in his name. Small groups worshipping in unfamiliar ways, experimental groups, groups offering opportunities for more diversity in leading worship, all uniting anew to be the church, God's people in troubling times. To all those, to us, he says, I am there with you. Amen.